Hello BookTube, this is Weekly Reads, Fullmetal Alchemist Special. Over the last week, I have been reading Fullmetal Alchemist by Hiromu Arakawa. Fullmetal Alchemist is one of the great manga series. It's about two brothers, Edward and Alphonse Elric. They are prodigy alchemists who attempt human transmutation, a forbidden alchemical operation with the intent of resurrecting their deceased mother. The transmutation fails, and the brothers are grievously wounded. Edward loses a leg, and Alphonse loses his body. In order to save Alphonse's life, Edward sacrifices his arm to transcribe Alphonse's soul onto a suit of armor. This, while both brothers are grievously wounded, this transgression does give them the ability to perform alchemy without having to manually draw a transmutation circle. They themselves are the transmutation circle. After Edward is outfitted with automel prosthetics, a fantasy prosthesis that allows full mobility, Edward becomes a state alchemist, serving the country of Amestris. He and his brother then travel around Amestris looking for the Philosopher's Stone, an alchemical object of legend reputed to be able to bypass the law of equivalent exchange. The brothers hope that the Philosopher's Stone will allow them to attain their original bodies. Fortunately, they discover the awful truth of the construction of the Philosopher's Stone and stumble upon a long-running conspiracy that goes to the very foundations of Amestris that sees both brothers, as well as a number of their allies, as important human sacrifices for the promised day. Fullmetal Alchemist is wonderful. I had a blast revisiting this series again, and I wasn't entirely sure how to talk about the series outside of that, because this is the third reread I have had done while I've been on BookTube, and the fourth reread overall. So my original thought was to focus on Volume 15, which is one of the most powerful single volumes of manga that I've read. Its exploration of war and its after effects and the guilt that comes with it is incredibly powerful. But I think while I'm going to touch on that, and I will use that volume to also show some images, I think I'm going to focus overall on my history with Fullmetal Alchemist. So I first became aware of Fullmetal Alchemist shortly after it first came out through the anime. So Fullmetal Alchemist has had two anime adaptations. The first one that came out shortly after Fullmetal Alchemist first began deviates from the manga's plot quite heavily after a certain point, while the second adaptation is far truer to the manga's storyline. And so I watched some of the first anime, and then I got into manga quite heavily in the late 2000s and into the early 2010s, where I picked up a few volumes of Fullmetal Alchemist and read the entire series through my library. I checked all of the volumes that I did not have up from there. And then when I got back into manga in a few years ago, Fullmetal Alchemist was one of the ones that I wanted to get back into the most, and was the second series that I fully completed. Which is why when I get to the best bookshelf tag, I'm going to mention Fullmetal Alchemist quite heavily in that video as well. So I reread Fullmetal Alchemist after a long time. Once I finished collecting the series, and that would have been in, I think, 2002. And then I reread it again in 2024, last year, and so I reread it again this year. And it's, every time I read the series, it is so much fun. It is so good. The humor, the drama, the seriousness, the exploration of the human condition, it is just so much fun and so powerful and so moving. Particularly Volume 15 and the final chapters. It was just one gut punch after another. I was crying reading the final volumes again. It's just, it moves me that much. So let's look at some really good images from this one. So, yeah. So this is volume 15, volume 15 is largely told in flashbacks. So at this point in the series, the Ulrich brothers and their allies have been stopped by the main antagonists of the series. And this volume serves as a bit of an interlude, but also a major piece of filling in the blanks. So looming, one of the many things that loom over the series is the Ishbalan Civil War. Amestris is an incredibly aggressive country. It is a military dictatorship. The leader of Amestris is a military dictator called Fuhrer President King Bradley. And years before the series begins, Amestris conquered or had begun to occupy Ishbal. And there was opposition to that, both within Ishbal itself and amongst the military. One day, an Ishbalan child was murdered by an Amestrian soldier, and this sparked a near decade-long civil war called the Ishbalan Civil War. Ultimately, King Bradley sent in the state alchemists. One of the duties of state alchemists is that when they are called upon, they will serve as human weapons. And essentially, many alchemists are, for all intents and purposes, human weapons of mass destruction. And the aftermath of the state alchemists coming into the conflict is that the Ishbalans were genocided. And in the aftermath, very few Ishbalans remain. There are some. One of the side antagonists of the series is an Ishmaelan named Scar, who is hunting down and assassinating state alchemists. Although, as the series progresses, he learns to, while his rage and anger never abates, he never forgives the Mestrians for what they did, but he hopes that through his actions and the example of his older brother, Amestris can change. Because the awful truth is that Amestris itself was created, intended to be a tool of mass slaughter. And yeah. And so with the defeat of King Bradley and his creator, a homunculus known as Father, things do change at the end, but there is a lot of struggle, a lot of bloodshed, and a lot of facing hard realities. So let's look at some images from Volume 15. So let's show you Scar. So this volume is told in large part by Risa Hawkeye, who is one of Edward and Alphonse Elric's allies. She's an adjutant to Colonel Roy Mustang, who is a state alchemist. He is the central cover model for this volume. He is the flame alchemist. He wears a special glove that can allow him to create sparks, and using a transmutation circle, he can send those sparks away from him and create large or small explosions. So, and then while Riza is telling Edward about what her experience is in Ishbal, Dr. Marco is telling Scar. Dr. Marco worked for the Mestrian government creating Philosopher's Stones. And then Dr. Knox, who's an old friend of Roy, is telling Alphonse and some other characters what went on. So, and it's just, this volume is harrowing. So yeah, so it was a lot of fun to read this volume. And rereading Fullmetal Alchemist again after not quite a year. So it's just, I love this series so much. It is one of my favorite series. And just, I'm a bit sad that it's over. Yeah. So that was Weekly Reads Fullmetal Alchemist special. I will be back later with another video, and I will, of course, continue the 2025 library tour. So until then, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.